and welcome to the third episode of Tech Horizons. My name's Madeleine Skillen, I'm the Marketing Manager at Procore Technologies, and today I'm joined by Daniel Lees, Head of Business Development at KOJ, a leading fit-out company in the UAE. Hi Danny, how are you doing today?
Very good, Madeleine. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I tend to start these podcasts super broad, so could you just give us an overview of what KOJ do in the region?
Yeah, sure. So KOJ Interiors, we're a self-delivery fit-out company. So by self-delivery, I mean we have a lot of trades in-house. So we have a huge manufacturing facility in Ras Al Khaimah, and that's home to where we produce everything related to joinery, acrylics, upholstery. We have a gypsum division, printing, signage, upholstery. Sometimes I tend to repeat this, so I do apologise for that. But yeah, so we do a lot of trades in-house. We work in multiple sectors of interior fit-out. So you'll see us fitting out a restaurant up until a headquarter building or a medical facility or a hotel. So we're quite diverse in what we do because we're not limited by supply chain. And yeah, I've been with the company now for just over 5 years. It's a great achievement of what we've achieved recently because 5 years ago no one knew who we were, and now we've been recently voted in top 5 fit-out companies in the GCC.
Wow, congratulations!
Yeah, we got highly commended for fit-out project of the year in Saudi Arabia and up for a few awards this year in CID. So we're definitely making waves in the industry for sure.
That's brilliant to hear. I mean, in terms of the project success that you've seen over the last 5 years then, focusing on technology, how has technology played a part in that? Yeah,
so technology, whenever you think about technology, a lot of people think about the sexy side of technology and everything related to all these like cool, fun things that you can create from a technology perspective.
Yeah.
When you break it down and think about technology is very, from basic right to complex in everything that we do as a business. Everything is related to technology. So, construction is heavily reliant on technology nowadays because, even when you're taking off a drawing and measuring quantities, you're using technology, as well as building renders and doing building scans is technology. You name it, and project management software is technology, like CRM software is technology. So technology plays a huge role in what we do from a basic level right up to a complex level and we couldn't exist without it, really.
So really, it is playing a key role, not just in the present, but you see it as being a key component to the future. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's a key role in everything that we do. Like as a business, we wouldn't exist without it. You remove technology, especially from manufacturing, because now everything's software operated. So you put in a design into manufacturing component, and that makes the component for you. So you take that away, you go back to workmanship, and then you bring in you bring in back like human elements, which can be led to mistakes and stuff. So it helps us be a lot more accurate in what we do. So technology, it's not just a huge role, it's everything in what we do, right from pricing a project to designing a project to building a project, to making a piece of furniture, to making some signage. Technology.
Integral part of all process.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Do you think it poses a risk, though, to the human factor that, your company has?
No. I always think about this because I listen to a lot of podcasts and everyone talks about the dangers of AI. And somebody made a very, very good point that, a hammer was created for construction, to build stuff, but it can also be created to do other things that can cause damage to humans. And it's the same for AI and it's the same for technology. Not to that extent in construction, but what I'm getting at is, there's always plus sides and minuses, but from our side, technology has only helped us dramatically with our business, whether that is building projects faster, better quality, and ultimately a better price. But with human elements, like there's still human aspect of everything that we do. We've not got to the point where technology takes over too much, and takes over the role of a human. It's still operated by a human, but we're assisted by technology to make our lives a lot easier, and to create stuff that's super special. Right from creating a presentation. There's software now that give you presentation templates so that you don't have to go and create it yourself, which means it looks better in front of a client. You can modify it, saves you a lot of time, which means you can do more presentations.
Yeah.
So for me, technology is only a plus. Like anyone that looks at it negatively, I don't know, it's just I find it a bit peculiar because, you know, you just have to leverage the plus side of it.
I mean, I think there's an argument that there is a lot of fear mongering out there, and I think that's driven sometimes by like general media narrative. But I also think that those that are scared of technology are often resistant to change and evolution, and just seeing technology as part of the evolution of your career and your role is actually just a really healthy way of looking at it, as opposed to seeing it as an obstacle to what you're currently doing. It's just going to open up more opportunity in the long run.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is as well, like people become specialists with this technology. So like our CNC machines, whilst operated from a computer software, which is technology, there's still a human managing that, you know? So if things do go wrong, a human's there to manage it. And there's still a lot, I think we are going at a fast rate, but there's still so much to go, you know, and the first jobs that are going to be, you know, probably replaced are like, I need to say this in the right way, but it's not like it's going to be a basic job. It's not going to be something that's complex, which needs a detailed eye. And then also as well, you need to also factor in the fact that once this technology is available, which can replace humans, what's going to be the cost of it? So can businesses afford this type of technology? Maybe not. So that will still bring a human element in there. So, you know, I would even go as to say as like, you know, but I don't think we'll see humans being replaced by technology in construction for my lifetime, you know, like, you know, where it's actually like a detrimental impact on jobs. You know, I don't think, and that's a bold thing to say, but for me, it's just technology just assists us in every aspect that we do, which then results in happy clients, good quality projects. And, you know, I think people fear technology if they don't understand it. Once you understand it and understand how you can harness it to help you, then, you know, that's the most important part. And, you know, most business is done through human relationships, right? So, you know, no machine's ever going to be able to replicate that. Yeah, they might be able to do a job that is, you know, technically faster to do and stuff like that. But like the human connection is still a big part of everything we do.
Yeah. Given that you've seen so many benefits then from technological implementation, are there any kind of standout projects that KOJ have been working on, whether that be in Dubai or, you know, further afield across the GCC, Saudi perhaps, that, you know, you've seen notable impact from? Yeah,
from my side, one of our plus points, and I'm not just saying this because we're on the Procore podcast, but generally Procore has been such a huge added benefit to what we do as a business because you know, we'll have projects where we have a kickoff meeting and there'll be 30 stakeholders in the room.
Yeah.
You know, to just be bouncing off emails left, right and center to get stuff approved, it's almost impossible. And these stakeholders travel and do things, you know, they're not just stuck in one place. So having a project management software tailored to our business like Procore has seen a huge impact in all of our projects. Now, again, it's not the most sexiest answer, but it's the basics that really help the most, which lead to the bigger impacts. So from a technology perspective, having Procore as a project management software for us has really helped us with managing projects all over the GCC. You know, we have projects in Dammam, Khobar, Riyadh, Jeddah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. That's hard for so many people to be in one place, you know. So that's one aspect that I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a project in particular, but like that has definitely helped harness us for sure. We've now started to create a lot of walkthroughs as well.
Okay.
With software, so that again, you know, the benefit is you know, people can actually feel the space. You know, we work with so many different dynamics of clients, from, you know, someone from the royal family down to a restaurant operator or a CEO or an office manager. And sometimes these people have different ways of buying. So, you know, the technology that we're able to use from a design aspect to create walkthroughs of the renders It's
Yeah.
almost like you're in the space, and you can have virtual reality where you put on some goggles and that takes you into like the space itself, and you look around and everything that you see is the render, but it gives you more of a kind of life size idea of what it's actually going to look like, rather than just, because a lot of people are always say is the render what it's going to look like in real life.
Yeah.
And obviously does depend on how much you spend in the end, but yeah, there's I wouldn't say one particular project in particular, but technology has definitely helped improve our business, multiple factors, multiple dynamics.
I guess there's a cost saving element as well. If you're doing a 3D walkthrough, then anything that maybe they're not happy with, it can be caught early doors.
Yeah.
And then you don't go through kind of like the pain and the headache and the cost implication of installing something that then is going to be taken out.
Yeah. I mean, from our perspective, I mean, when it gets to that point, we wouldn't necessarily install something that would be not approved by the client. But yeah, it definitely helps from that visual aspect. But also as well, going back to the cost element, is we haven't even touched based on the software and technology that we use to price a project.
Yeah.
Like that helps us build a lot of data in the market of kind of different types of materials. You'll have different types of doors, for example. Some will be fire rated, some won't be fire rated, some will be soundproof, some, so, using software where we can store this information, so we've just got it readily available at our hands, like it makes it very easy for us to be able to assist clients with future projects that, what's going to be the cost of this, but not only that as well, also have a backlog of information where we can actually provide suitable alternatives. So, designers are at the forefront of making projects look fantastic, and the reason why a lot of the projects in Dubai look so good is because of these designers. But as a contractor, our job is to make sure that we bridge the gap between reality and budgets to an amazing render. So like having software from an estimation perspective also supports us with being able to provide suitable alternatives for clients when, 9 times out of 10 their budget doesn't meet what the render will be. So yeah, in answer to your question, like I could probably talk about for hours, because every aspect of what we do has some sort of added benefit. Like the technology that we use from every single department has an added benefit to every project that we do, to make sure that it's delivered to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I love the part that you talked about remote collaboration as well, because I think that's becoming more of a consideration, especially with the pandemic. It kind of acted as a catalyst for there being now a need of remote collaboration, but then obviously it just plays to the favour as well when you're working in this globalised world where people are positioned physically in very many different locations. And again, from a client relationship point of view, I imagine that that's only ever a benefit when you're able to kind of communicate in real time, collaborate when needed, and then obviously communicate as soon as possible.
Yeah, and if you even go back into like, now the buzzword is like eco-friendly, right? So technology, when you think about technology, my job in business development is I meet a lot of clients, meet a lot of people, I'm driving around a lot. Now technology like Teams, Zoom, Google Meet allows me to be able to effectively be more eco-friendly, because I will then not have to go and meet people all the time, which means I'm driving less, which means less pollution. So, really, as I said, like I could talk about this for hours, because when you break down technology, it supports you in so many different aspects. You just have to make sure that you're thinking not only just about the complex items, but also the very, very basics, which and how it supports you, and even down to, working with clients globally. Sometimes we'll work with stakeholders that are all around the globe. That enables this person to connect with you immediately through any which means possible, so that they're not having to travel in and out and so on. So yeah, I mean, collaboration, and like you say, COVID kind of like pushed it into our perspective. But one of the positives you can probably take from that scenario is the fact that it's enabled us to think differently about how we do business, collaborate, which ultimately leads back to building better projects.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't want to necessarily, actually it's not even about whether people want to or not. A lot of companies aren't just going to spend the money to be sending people on a whim here, there and everywhere. There are some real world considerations that need to be made, especially in this economic climate. I would say there are macroeconomic headwinds that need to be considered for businesses. So where they can save money and still operate at the same, or if not, an enhanced efficiency, then they'll do that.
Yeah, and it's enabled people to work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
You know, and that enables people to then be able to, you know, coming from a working class family, for example, when I was growing up, I didn't see my parents that much because, you know, they had to work all the time. Whereas if I'd have been a child in this day and there would have been parents working in this day, we'd have spent so much more time together because people now have the freedom to be able to work remotely, you know, do whatever they need to do throughout the day because technology allows it, and then spend more time with the things that really matter the most, which then results back into a more positive outlook in the workplace because people are happy because they're having that healthy balance rather than just working all the hours that God sends. And if somebody wants to be able to work in the evening and kind of like prioritize their schedule a little bit differently to the average person, again, technology allows you to do that. So yeah, like you say, it's when you look at it from everything that, you know, I keep going back to it, from basic technology right up to complex technology, it allows, you know, I can only really look at it and say, yeah, it's a positive in everything we do.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the benefits of technology and you've been really positive about it, but do you see any challenges in terms of implementation? What are kind of the key considerations that maybe KOJ makes when it is looking at a new technology partner?
Yeah, I mean, talking about specifics in terms of construction, you know, there's a lot of software now that some of the more kind of high-tech buildings, like ICD, for example, which has been voted like, you know, one of the best lead ratings in globally. They only operate on a BIM software, for example. Now, a BIM software is like a software that you would use to design projects on, but it's super comprehensive where you can literally it leaves no room for error, which is great when it comes to construction. Now, on the flip side is sometimes you might not have people that are trained on BIM and certain types of software. So the only downside that you will get is if people are not moving with the times. So like, you know, and this is why...
As in like a generational gap, or?
Even just, for example, when you go to universities, like I spend a lot of time in universities talking to the students about what they do from a design aspect. And, you know, no disrespect to what they're doing, but when you look at what the students are creating compared to what's going on in the workplace, there's a huge difference between quality.
Yeah.
And yeah, that takes time because obviously you need experience to create good quality kind of designs and stuff. I get that, but the softwares that they use are quite dated. So like you imagine you've got students coming through, and if they're in, and fair enough, we're talking very generally here, but when you talk about the most expensive universities, which not everyone has the privilege to, they're probably learning on every software you can imagine, and you know the most up to date technology. But when you go to like a more cost efficient university, they won't be teaching students on these whatever technology it might be. So the only difference, and I would say negative you would have to that, is like people are learning different things and technology is moving at a very fast rate. So the only negative you would find is if we're kind of falling behind on those practices.
Yeah.
You know, as I said to you at the beginning with the walkthroughs that we do now, you know, that's a technology that's been around for years.
Yeah.
You know, Blue House were one of the first people that introduced that. I remember going to their offices and they were like, hey, check out this office. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. But they were doing it 4 or 5 years ago. You know, now other companies are starting to like, okay, this is a good thing, you know, like 3D scanning of buildings, like only certain businesses will do that. Maybe that's because of budgets and so on. But yeah, the only negative I would say is the fact of, you know, how people are actually catching up with this technology.
Yeah.
Is it readily available in their education system? Is it readily available in their workplace? Do people have the budgets for it? Can people afford this type of... So negatives would probably be cost of technology and how quickly we can actually get up to date with it.
It's funny you say that, because in terms of the gulf between people's ability to navigate themselves through the software or the technology and where the software actually is. In a previous episode, I had a conversation with a gentleman called Prakash Sangani, and we were talking about BIM. And when it first came out around about 15 years ago, actually we found that people weren't ready for it. And they're only just kind of catching up now in terms of the intricacy and how complex it is. but it is becoming more of a necessity as well, because as projects become larger and far more complex to manage, they need that level of detail to be able to kind of oversee the complexion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you know, even you saying that, I didn't realise BIM was 15 years old, because it's only something that really has been talked about in the last kind of like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, you go to most of the buildings in Dubai and their software won't be BIM. It'll be just through AutoCAD software. So, and you know, the more premium buildings are the ones that really set the wave of like using these this technology that's a little bit more advanced. But yeah, like you say, it's like, you know, this stuff comes, but no one's ready to adopt it, you know.
Yeah. Do you see the generational divide? You talked about obviously university students working off software that's outdated, and then coming into the workplace and obviously having to get up to speed. And potentially that's where a human element is as well, because you still need people to train others on a software, and you may have, I don't know, an internal super user.
Yeah.
We do see those. There's Procore super users, for example.
Yeah.
But do you see the generational divide in that respect? Do you think that there is some benefit there to kind of an older generation working with a younger generation and kind of bridging the gap between the two?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, even when you say that, I can just think about people in my office that, you know, find it hard to get up to date with the technology that's there, and you'll see them always kind of drifting back. And that's also applicable for myself. You know, I still like to make notes on a notepad, for example. You know, for some reason,
You like the feel of the
when I write
paper.
stuff down, I remember it better than typing, you know.
Yeah.
So there's different aspects of that. But yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you know, the good thing is now, I mean, for example, if I go away from construction a little bit and talk about video editing, you know, on my podcast, when I started it 4 years ago, there was only really, you know, super technical video editing software.
Yeah.
Now, you know, my mum could edit a video on software. So the point I'm getting at is the technology is now becoming, you know, once it comes out, it's like a super technical version. And then over the years, what they do is they get it to the point where it's very user friendly.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that talks about a lot with Procore is how easy it is to use compared to other systems that we've used previously. So like, you know, how you counteract that is by making it far more user friendly, so that, you know, I mean, the saying goes, right, if, you know, you just need to make sure a caveman can understand it. And if you can get to that point, then technology will be adopted so much easier.
Yeah.
Which I see it going that way, because like you say, it's so easy to use.
Yeah.
You know, and the good thing is obviously technology now means that support services, you're connected 24/7. So making it more user friendly. But yeah, there's definitely been a generational gap for the more technical elements. But then, you know, when I meet the younger people as well, like there's some people that there's a vast kind of like difference in quality. Sometimes on what they can produce. There's also still a lot to learn from young people as well, because they don't just learn from being in university, they learn in every walk of their life. So, and you know, these kids have grown up with technology, so they're like super specialists with it. So you sit down with, you know, like a 17-year-old, 18-year-old person now, and they can tell you a lot about technology, and you know,
Or like even younger, I've got nieces and nephews that are 4 or 5, and the way that they're navigating the work themselves through kind of like iPads. So I never would have been able to do that at that age. I was still colouring.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got some kids now that know how to code, and you know, from my aspect, I don't even think I've got the mental capacity to be able to go back and learn how to like code. But you know, these kids have just grown up around technology now, you know. And I was chatting to a friend at work recently, and he was saying that a part of the kind of uniform that they need for schools now is kids have to have an iPad. So, you know,
Wow.
I literally got my first iPad on my birthday and June this year.
Yeah.
You know, I go from a MacBook and stuff, but like, and I've got a phone which I use quite a lot, so maybe I didn't need it. But the point I'm getting at is, you know, these kids are growing up with technology, so
Digital natives.
Exactly. Whereas we're not as much, you know. Like, you know, you speak to a lot. I think the kind of coming away from this point and going back to the point you mentioned earlier, the negatives, is, you know, what you probably tend to see, especially with the younger generation now, is their soft skills and people skills are probably not as advanced as what ours were, because when we were growing up, way before the construction days. You know, it was like go outside and play, do these things. So I'll probably say the technology aspect, if it's not controlled, can have a negative impact on soft skills and the people side of Element, which is, again, still a huge part of how we do business.
It's funny you say that, because we recently released a report, or it's a research report called How We Build Now. And when we looked at talent retention and attrition, we were trying to establish where the skills gap was. And ultimately, they said that the skills gap was in soft skills, and that in the future, construction companies are going to have to work on upskilling their workforce within that realm. And I would actually argue that soft skills are harder to kind of develop than the harder skills. Communication, you know, we talked earlier on about remote collaboration, but if people aren't used to having a face-to-face conversation because they're always behind a screen, that's an issue when it comes to when you're client-facing, for example, and that's incredibly important in your line of work, I imagine. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I see it a lot with the content guys that we have, because we focus a lot on marketing, you know. So again, you know, when you look at the construction industry now, and you know, maybe I'm a little bit biased in how I say this, but you know, I would say that we were one of the first construction companies that made marketing look good. You
have some brilliant videos out there.
Yeah, and that all started 5 years ago when I joined, because I was like, what we need to do is we need to be doing stuff that not this industry. Let's not focus on this industry. Let's focus on like marketing in general. Like we need to be doing stuff that's like just as a general, you know, and we need to open the door so that people can physically feel like they're stepping foot into our office without having to step foot into our office. And that was kind of like the core element of, you know, us creating a lot of content. And if you go to any of our social media, you know, you can see an interview with our CEO down to our document controller to a recent project to a tour of the factory, you name it. So again, technology has allowed us to do that. But going back to that point is, you know, I've seen it from the guys that create so much content, is they're kind of like brain dead by the time you have a conversation with them at the end of the day, because they've just been consumed by the screen. They've not spoken to anyone. So then when it's like, they have to shift their brain when it goes to talking to someone. And you can see that they do become a little bit socially awkward because they're just not used to interacting.
Yeah. Do KOJ do anything in particular to try and ease that implementation of new technology? You know, maybe upskill the workforce to make sure that there's a balance between the hard and the soft skills?
We do a lot of team building. And that is where, you know, what we want to do is, you know, promote the fact that, you know, it doesn't matter if I'm head of business development, you know, we don't want any hierarchy in the office. So, you know, if you want to go and speak to the CEO, you can go and walk in his office and have a chat and have a coffee with him. And it's the same for me. When I go into the office, you know, I make sure I'm saying hello to every single person in that office. What we do is we create communities. So the community is different communities, which will, the social society, we call it. And the social society is made up of people in different departments, from a document controller to a driver to a designer, a senior. And every month we come up with social activities that we can do to get together. And the teams, when we get together, is we mix the teams. So it will literally be the driver is in the team with the CEO and stuff like that. So everyone's getting to mix with each other. We obviously celebrate a lot of birthdays and do a lot of social events in the office. So
I saw that you guys were giving blood the other week as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So stuff like that, and where you get to get people together. So you take, you know, there's no easy way to sit a person down and say, we need to improve your soft skills or interaction with humans, apart from actually doing that.
And it's a bit more organic that way as well.
Exactly. But the less organic ways is by setting up events. But like, we're always trying to promote that. And, you know, once a month I'll take somebody for lunch and have a chat with them, and, you know, spend a lot of time and, you know, get to know the human element inside of the person. So there's probably a lot more we could be doing, and there's probably someone listening and going, oh, well, we do more than that. But, you know, we try our best to implement as much as possible for the human element, so that it takes it's a break away from that.
Yeah. Looking at your client relationships then, because that's obviously, fundamental to your success. How do you think technology has really helped to improve those? Can you go into a little bit more detail? I know we've talked about collaboration and keeping them up to date. We've talked about 3D walkthroughs, but is there anything kind of at the very end of a project where you've received feedback from clients and it's been kind of like tech specific?
It's a great question. A lot of the feedback we get now, especially with clients from a technology perspective, wouldn't necessarily be anything specifically apart from the fact that a lot of clients now like to keep an eye on their projects. So we'll install CCTV cameras or time-lapse cameras on the project so that a client can log into the project at any time and see what's going on.
Yeah.
They're one of the requests we tend to get quite a lot.
That's pretty cool that they can see how projects are progressing in real time.
Yeah, it is cool. It is really cool. Even though they do have live updates on the Procore software, so. But yeah, no, that we do that as well, and that's not something that we just do as a standard. It's just they can have that whenever they want. But from our side, having the software and technology, what that's enabled us to do is be an expert in the information we provide, because we're building up data of years and years and years and years and years of building projects that when it comes down to the actual project itself, we're able to educate and explain the reason why something costs what it costs. But yeah, you always have clients that will say, I want it built faster, I want it built at lesser cost and stuff like that. But yeah, even down to snagging now, snagging, we've been able to use software with technology that picks up snags and stuff. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything that we could particularly do better. There's always stuff that we could do better, of course. But
that's natural with any.
Yeah, but those I would say those are the kind of requests that we get.
Yeah. In terms of data, then you touched on it and making data-driven decisions. I guess it's also driving continuous improvement as well, because you talked about obviously historic data and building up that bank. And that's incredibly important when you're driving for future enhancements from one project to the next project to the next. And in a world where clients are becoming more demanding, and I think that's probably the most polite way of putting it, and projects are becoming more complex, that's obviously incredibly important as well, that you have that reference point and can see how you can obviously improve certain processes and catch snags quicker as well, so that you're reducing that at the end of a project.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a thing where the human element has to come back in. So if I just touch basically on the snags, so before we hand over a project, we'll do snagging before we've handed it over. So we won't do the snagging at the end of the project. We'd have already done some form of pre-snagging, but that comes from a human detailed eye. So the snagging element, we do a pre-snagging kind of phase before project hangover, which is done by the operations team, the quality assurance team, health and safety, etc. But yeah, building up all that data over the years enables us to be able to really have a backbone of information, and yes, it constantly changes, but we were able to update it. So in our software, from an estimation perspective, we have build-up rates. So if a client's saying that I can get, this, for example, gypsum wall for cheaper, there's so many different aspects of the build-up for it that, we can say, well, have you considered this? Have you considered that? Have you considered that? Because, whilst there is some amazing projects in Dubai, a lot of the time it is a race to the bottom. So, and, variations, how many clients that I've met that no variations, because they got their fingers stung before, got hit with variations, took the lowest cost, variation after variation after variation, ends up going up in value. Clients not very happy. So having that information enables us to again go back to the education element of saying this is our justification to why we've done this. Your decision, you do whatever you want to do, no problem, but we're just justifying why we are at this point. If there is room for maneuver, of course we'll do that, but ultimately we've actually built in some substantiation of why we're doing what we're doing, and that should give us enough evidence to say we're not trying to like just take loads of money off you. Like we're actually doing things practically here.
That's interesting because I've never seen the tool as being used to evidence cost. Obviously, we've heard a lot about quality control and budget control, but actually to evidence that, to maintain that transparency between you and the client. And I guess that's what builds the trust as well, which is so incredibly important, because it might be that they want to come back to you for another project in the future. And if they feel that they can trust you and you've always been very authentic and transparent about where the money's going and the output of that, then even better.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head there is, clients coming back and having that human element. This is why it's still so super relevant for the human connection. Technology will assist us, but it will never take away the fact of the trust. As humans, we all understand, and you can feel, when, don't get me wrong, like we would love to work with everyone that we meet, but like sometimes there's just not that connection. So we're not for every client, and every client is not for us. The service that we offer is one that is valued by certain clients, and some people just don't want to be educated. Sometimes they just generally want to go for the cheapest projects and stuff like that. So, having technology to assist us, it gives us that information to be able to attack those situations as well.
Yeah. We've covered a lot. I always ask my guests this very last question, which is essentially, if you were to give some advice either to your younger self or to somebody that were entering the workforce within construction and maybe specifically fit out, what would that advice be?
I always say, I always tend to find, men's responses to a lot of things are just black and white. So I'm going to say what I always say and say on my podcast as well is, people buy from people. So if I had to actually talk to my younger self or anyone coming into the industry, is like, don't be afraid to show your vulnerabilities, because you sometimes think that, because I'm new to the industry, like, people are going to see me as unexperienced and stuff like that. But from my side, I like people to be super honest, like, hey, I'm new with KOJ or whatever it might be, or new to the industry. Can I meet for a coffee? Because I just want to get to know some people in the market, so never underestimate that. People buy from people. So whenever you're feeling like a little bit inferior on a certain situation, don't feel that way. And for me, there's another aspect is working hard. It sounds crazy, but like hard work beats talent every single day this week, because if talent can't work hard, then what's the point in having it? So if you're able to work hard and upskill yourself and be able to be that person that adopts technology and works smart, that's going to be a huge asset to you. And always say yes to an opportunity, and then just figure out where it's going to go. It's I'm not a trained construction professional. I'm a trained chef by trade. How have I been able to make my way to the head of one of the biggest fit-out companies in the UAE? Is because I said yes to every single opportunity. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does work out. So those are the kind of things I would advise for anyone that wants to join in and say to my younger self.
Yeah, being open-minded enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone's based. The most important thing is, like I say, people buy from people. Like I think there's now over 6,000 fit-out companies in, the UAE. So when you think about all the service providers that are out there, what are the fundamental factors to why somebody wants to work with your company? 9 times out of 10, it is down to the individual, and some people will be listening to this saying, yeah, but it's price, timeline, stuff like that. But what's that person being able to find out? Is being able to find out how much the client wants to spend, when they want to finish the project by, who the competition is, et cetera, et cetera. And that's because people buy from people. And if they buy into you, then they'll buy the concept.
Research has actually shown that people make a purchasing decision from their heart.
Exactly.
As opposed to their head.
Yeah.
So.
And that was one of the first things I learned when getting into sales, from leaving the kitchen and going into people skills. Very similar to what I said about the content creators. I was used to being in a kitchen with aggressive people, high tense environment, barely speaking apart from having to say yes, chef. And then I was flicked into this environment of people. And I struggled because you know, with what we do in every aspect of life is sometimes you face rejection, and that's very difficult to deal with at times, depending on what rejection it might be. But someone sat me down and they said, you know, people buy from people. You know, once they buy you, they buy the concept. And that was probably one of the most valuable pieces of information I could have ever had, because it's something that stuck with me for the rest of my life and career.
Well, brilliant. Great advice. Some 3 nuggets of gold there, I think. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. It's been brilliant. And
yeah, it's good. I'm glad that we had this conversation, because, you know, sometimes in a working way, you know, working world, sorry, you just get up and get on with your day. But having to sit down and talk about this just opens up different avenues of your brain, of information that you access, which you always knew, but you rarely used. Do you know what I mean? So having these types of conversations and understanding, you know, importance of technology and stuff like that is so critical to what we do. Because, you know, when I sat down and actually thought about this podcast, I was like, wow, everything is technology, you know? So it's a huge aspect to what we do. So thank you very much for inviting me on, and yeah, good luck with the rest of your podcast.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Thank you.